Hi, everybody. We are continuing on with our review of the Tatum book. Um, Now, to be clear, the Tatum book is a jumping off point to continue the conversation about developing our cultural competency. So, a couple of assignments you have done have been developing on your cultural competency by looking at your own identities and unpacking what that means to you and how that affects your sense of self. For the second part, we're going to look at the other part of cultural competency. So, if you recall, Latson-Billings defines that cultural competency as a strong understanding of who you are in your identity, your culture, plus having familiarity with a different one. So, for this assignment, I would like for you to do the second part, which is familiarity with a different culture. Okay, so I know that many of you have already done some work in discovering other cultures that are not your own. So I know that that's not anything new for you. However, what I would want you to do, and I think this would be helpful to make the most use out of this course, is for you to pick one that you admit that you're not that familiar with. Um, in the book, you can see that Tatum discusses Asian American students, Latino students, mixed race, Native American. Those are the ones that come to the top of my head. My sense is that there's probably a group in there that you would appreciate the opportunity of learning more about, that you have not had the opportunity to learn more about. Um, and this group should be one that you do not feel that you're a part of. Again, to emphasize, the second part of cultural competency is familiarity with a culture that's not your own. As you think about this other culture, I want us to move beyond um, some basic understanding of, okay, this is the food that they eat. These are a couple of cultural pieces that are interesting to know. I wanted to go a little bit deeper, and these are the things I want you to think about as you're going into this assignment. Um, and it all goes back to you and understanding yourself better as well. So, as you move forward with this assignment, I want you to think about what is it about their developmental processes that is really something that they work through and deal with in their own identity development process. So, for example, for Asian American students, it's really unpacking and understanding the model minority myth. And if you're really interested in, for example, in understanding Japanese Americans, it's really getting into the heart of understanding what it is and what the deal was with um, the internment that they dealt with several years ago, and how that has affected their psyche and their attitudes towards politics and things of that nature. So, really think about the issues that this particular group deals with as they are working through their identity development. Um, Tatum also looks at white identity development, so that one is also up for grabs too. If you're, for example, a student of color, you can also really start digging more into white identity development if you feel that's something that's important for you to do. So that's basically what I want you to do for this particular unit, is to start looking at the other, understand what their identities are, what issues they're dealing with as far as their identity development process goes. I would like one of your articles to be focusing on the developmental process. I believe that Tatum does reference a couple of developmental issues to get you going in case you don't know where to start. Or you can email me or text me through GroupMe, and I can give you some ideas of what authors you might want to be looking into. But pretty much you can Google it and you'll see something there. So the final thing that I want you to think about while you're working on this assignment is your response and reaction to understanding the other and how that affects you more, understanding more about yourself. And this is the hard part, right? It's one thing to understand, to hear, for example, me learning about Native Americans. I'm like, okay, that's really interesting, and this is cool, and I'm learning more about this group. But then if you flip it back to yourself, okay, how does this help me understand more about who I am and my identities? It's a compare and contrast process, right? Like, what do I have in common with this group? What things can I have some understanding because maybe I have some background that's similar but not quite the same thing? And what things about this particular population experience that I really don't know. I can't relate. And just being honest with those pieces, right? What can I relate to? What can I not relate to? And really being honest. Maybe there's parts that you just really don't understand, or parts of the process that you've never really thought about, and it's making you think about things in different ways. So again, it all comes back to you, right? You're still learning about a different culture, but in essence, learning about that culture helps you really understand more about who you are and your identities, and maybe really understanding what your privileges really are about, or that being marginalized, that there's some universal truths about that. So it's similar to the assignment that we've had before. I want to ask you to look up a couple of sources and to reflect. I will give you more details in the write-up on Sakai. So good luck. Just to give you a teaser for next week, we're going to start looking at intercultural competency, and intercultural maturity. So we're assessing where we are with our ability to understand others and our ability to facilitate that process of social justice and diversity. All right. Have a good weekend.